What's up guys, it's Ash here and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video guys, we've got some custom tactics and player instructions for probably the most ratty formation in FIFA 23, this being the 5-4-1. The reason it's so ratty is because it's super good in attack and super good in defense, so it's very difficult to beat. But yeah, just before we get into the video guys, I'd very much appreciate it if you could drop this a thumbs up as it does really help me out. It's team of the season, so if you guys need any coins, make sure you check out MMOXP.com. Their link is down in the description. They're fast, cheap and reliable, and if you use my code REMA you can get yourself a nice 5% discount. Alright then guys, so starting off with the custom tactics. For the defensive style, I like to have this on balance. This is because it gives you the greatest control over your defense, where when you need to press you're able to press, and when you want to drop off, be a little bit more passive, you're also able to do that. The other settings don't really give you that control and balance, which is why I think balanced is the best option. Moving on to the defensive width, I like to have this on about 40. The reason for this is so we can primarily have that nice narrow and compact defense, which means your opponent's not going to be able to just run right through the middle of you and get easy goals. They're not going to be able to pass right through your players and that kind of thing. It makes them very tucked in, close together, which is super important. And because we've got a back five, we've also still got a bit of natural width as well, so we can still cover the wider areas in case an opponent tries an attack down the wing, which is super important. Moving on to the depth guys, I like to have this on about 55 with this formation. The reason for this is the defensive line isn't too deep to the point where we're always getting pinned back and we have constant pressure on us, and on the flip side it's not too high to the point where we're always getting through balled and conceding easy and preventable goals. So I like to go for 55s. It's nice and balanced. Sometimes we can defend a little bit deeper, other times we can defend a bit higher. Now moving on to build-up play guys, I suggest using balanced as it is the most controlled. Basically when you want to play slowly you're able to do that, and when you want to speed it up and play a bit faster you're also able to do that. So it really does give you the variety and control that the other tactics do not give you, so I do suggest balance for this reason. Moving on to chance creation guys, as always I suggest using direct passing. This is because it's by far the most meta option in the game. Basically your attacking players will bunch up against the defenders, so you can do the really overpowered 1v1 isolation plays to get those easy chances. Players also make the extra movements in the box, so you can play that extra pass to guarantee the goals. Now moving on to the width guys, I like to have this on 45. The reason for this is I don't like having the width super low, otherwise your players are like too bunched together when you go into attack and it's not too useful. And on the flip side I don't like having the width crazy high either, because it feels like your players are like too far apart, and playing a simple pass from a player to another player just seems very difficult because of the distance. So I kind of just like to go for something in between and have this on 45. Moving on to players in box guys, I like to have this on 6. This is so we can get some players into the box to create those chances, but we don't overcommit the entire team to the point where we're always getting counter-attacked. As for corners and free kicks, I have these both on 1, but they're down to preference. The reason I have them on 1 is because there's a set piece routine that I use which requires these to be on 1. There is a link to that in the top right hand corner of the screen if that interests you. Moving on to the players you want to use guys, I'm just going to give some suggestions. It's not like you have to use these players, but I'm just going to give some suggestions so you know the types of players you could use and the types of players that I use. So in the striker position, I like to use a nice well-rounded striker. This is because technically he's the only forward in the team if you look at the way the formation is set up. So I like to go for a nice well-rounded striker so that they're able to do a bit of everything. If you go for like a lengthy clunky player like Haaland for example, you're very restricted with what you can do with him. You can only play like through balls to him, you can only cross the ball, because he's not that type of player which is able to like build up the play, dribble past opponents very well. So I like to go for a nice balanced player, as sometimes they can get involved in the build up and I just feel like you get a lot more out of them that way. Moving on to the right mid and left mid, you can pretty much use whoever you want, but I suggest using really good attacking players. You don't really have to worry too much about their defensive stats, but I would go for players that are either like super fast or super powerful, with really good dribbling stats, good passing obviously, good shooting, basically just really good all-round attack. The skill moves would be a bonus, but you really don't have to worry too much about their defensive stats. That's just an added bonus if you want to get players with good defensive stats as well. Moving on to the centre mids, I like to go for a balance between my two centre mids. So my left centre mid is more defensive. This is somebody that's just going to really add the defensive security to the team and make sure we are as defensively sound as possible. I think it's very important to have a nice balanced midfield. So even if you want to have like all attacking players in your team, still not a very good idea, because you do need to have that balance. As for the right centre mid, speaking of balance, I like to go for a more box-to-box style player. This is somebody that's going to attack and defend. So I like to go for somebody with like a high work rate, as you get the best contribution in attack and defence. But you're just going to want somebody with nice, well-rounded stats here so that they can do a bit of everything. Moving on to the wing backs, guys, you have a bit of freedom here. Just beware though, like depending on the types of players that you use, it might change your instructions and it might change the effectiveness of these players in the game. So what I mean by this is I like to go for one fullback in the left wing back position. This is somebody that's still capable of attacking, because Roberto Carlos obviously has good attacking stats, but he's obviously a little bit more defensively sound, and obviously his attack wouldn't be as good as a winger. But I like to go for one fullback in one wing back position and then an actual winger in the other one. The reason I do this is because these wing backs are actually going to go forward, so it's important that they actually have good attacking stats, otherwise they're going forward for no reason. You don't want somebody terrible at attacking going forward, because then it doesn't work. So I suggest having at least one winger in the in the wing back positions, but you can use like two fullbacks if you like, or if you want to be super aggressive, you can use two wingers. As for the three centre backs, these just need to be meta players. There's not too much to say about them. And the goalkeeper, again, you can choose whoever you want, because they're all pretty terrible in this game. Now, moving on to the player instructions, guys. On the striker, I like to have him on stay central and mixed attack. We have him on stay central because we don't want him drifting out wide, especially since he's our only striker. We need him to be in the central areas, so he's always there when we need him. We don't want him drifting out super wide, because that's not too useful to us. And I also have him on mixed attack, as I feel like, again, you get a lot more out of the player this way. If you put them on getting behind, they're always making the same one-dimensional runs, and they're kind of limited in what they can do. When you put them on mixed attack, they get more involved in the build-up, and I feel like the attacks just flow a little bit better this way. Moving on to the right mid and the left mid, we have them on comeback on defense, cut inside, getting behind, and get into the box for cross. We have them on comeback on defense, so we ensure that they always get back into the correct position when we don't have the ball. This is super important, because if you have them on basic defensive support, sometimes these players can get a bit lost and they won't fill the position correctly. So comeback on defense just ensures that they're always in the correct position when we don't have the ball. We have them on getting behind, because it's important that they're always making those runs, otherwise the formation will feel extremely flat. We do need these players to actually go, we do need them to make those runs, otherwise nothing will really happen. I think it's super important to have this instruction on the wider players. And then we also have them on get into the box for cross, so they do like transition a little bit, so they do get into the penalty area to finish off those chances, because obviously if you look at the team, we've only really got one striker, so it's important to get some players to get into the box. I also have them on cut inside, because you're going to see why this makes sense with our wing backs, but by having them on cut inside, they're going to run into those more narrow areas, which are very difficult for your opponent to defend. But like I said, this will make more sense when we look at the wing backs. Moving on to the left centre mid, the more defensive minded player, I have him on stay back and cover centre. We have him on stay back because obviously he's a defensive player, so we don't want him going forward. Pretty self-explanatory stuff. And then we have him on cover centre, so he does cover those central areas. Right centre mid, the more box-to-box player, we have him on the default settings and cover centre. We have him on default settings because we don't really want to restrict him all that much. He has a bit of a free roll, so we kind of let him do his own thing. And then again, we have him on cover centre, so he does block those attacks through the middle. Moving on to the wing backs, we have them on join the attack and overlap. The reason we do this and the reason it works so well is because, like I said, the left mid and the right mid, we have them on cut inside, which means they're going to be running into those narrow pockets of space to attack and to really help us out. But when they cut inside, there's nobody in the wider positions, which is where the wing backs come in. So because they're cutting inside and running narrow, when we put the wing backs on join the attack overlap, we've got the left mid and right mid running into the narrow areas, and then we've got the wing backs running into the wider areas, making the overlapping runs. This means we have both narrow options and wide options when we're on the attack, which is super hard for your opponent to defend. I think you guys are starting to understand why this formation is so good, because when you're defending, it's a 5-4-1 formation, which is obviously very difficult to break past. And then when you're attacking, you've got like right mid and left mid that are almost playing like two forwards, and then you've got the wing backs adding extra width. So you're really good in attack as well as defense. Super overpowered to have them on join the attack and overlap. As for the three centre backs and the keeper, these are on the default settings and I do not touch them, guys. But yeah, they are my custom tactics and player instructions for the 5-4-1 541. If you have enjoyed or found this useful, please be sure to drop this a like, sub to the channel if you are new, and don't forget to turn on notifications. With all that aside, guys, hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.